Welcome to week 3 of our journey through the tarot.
This week, we focus our learning on cards 8 through 14 of the Major Arcana, which include cards that sometimes perplex new readers, like the Hanged Man and Temperance.
Don't worry, by the end of this lesson, and with some reflecting on your own, you'll come to understand how these cards relate to the modern human experience.
So grab your notebook and your tarot cards 8 through 14 of the Major Arcana, and let's continue our journey through the tarot.
All right, we're going to get started with the Strength card.
The Strength card. All right, and Kat and I have a little difference in here, so you guys let us know what you think it really is, either like in the Q&A or in the chat.
Oh yeah, we do. We interpreted this card. Each of us interpreted an element of this card differently. So we want to know what you think when we get to that. Yes. You'll understand in a minute.
All right, so we're trying to provide you with archetypes within the cards, because just seeing the word strength and seeing the lady with a lion and, what does it all mean? Like, what's the message? What are they trying to convey? So we put this as the hero archetype. And the hero is very specific as somebody who is going to do something that is not just for their benefit. It's actually to benefit others as well. You can use the word altruistic, but there's always that element of like courage and going forth with something, but it's not just for their own goals or desires. Like, it helps out other people. So in almost every story, movie, you're going to find the hero archetype. This is the character who displays uncommon bravery, courage, and strength. The character that I picked, I hope you guys will nerd out with me a little bit, but I did pick Frodo from Lord of the Rings because he's on a quest and he's not just doing it for himself, and it takes a toll on him. He has to sacrifice a lot of things. That's another big part of this, is sacrificing. Sometimes it's things about yourself you have to sacrifice, or other people, not as in like dying sacrifice, but ending friendships, changing jobs, moving places. There's always that sacrifice that you make. Or Harry Potter, of course, every thing he gets into, he's always trying to save the school or save somebody else, never necessarily just himself. He benefits, but it's never just personally about him. So those are the two heroes that I associate the Strength card with, as being on that journey or exerting something that comes from within. It's not necessarily a natural ability. They have to grow into that. They have to learn to tame their mind and themselves and really be scared and do it anyways. So in the Strength card, we do see the maiden prying open the lion's mouth or closing the lion's mouth. That's our difference. Let us know what you think.
So you think closing, but I'm like, why would she be closing his mouth? That's it's like,
I said, why did she open it?
Why is she opening it? Anyway, we don't know, right? This is where interpretation comes in, and your interpretation is the one that matters.
Yeah.
So you get to decide what she's doing and why she's doing it. Like, why? So when you're thinking about this card, ask yourself, put yourself in the scene and be like, why is she doing that?
And if it was this way or that way, like, how's that benefit the card description or meaning or purpose for you? All right. So she is displaying that bravery because she's sort of unafraid of a beast that could literally kill her. And that's using that inner strength and personal power that she's mustered up to go and do that act. She reminds us that when we're courageous, we can overcome any obstacle. It doesn't mean we don't have fear. We just do it anyways. So the symbolism within the card to help you with memorization or to understand the other elements that can be read with the card. The white robe that she wears is a symbol of purity of mind and heart. Remember, the journey or the act that they're doing is not purely egotistical. It benefits them, but it also benefits a greater good. That's the best way to say that. It just means that the intentions are noble and for a lot more people than just like a single journey. Gently closing, because that's what I think it is, gently closing the lion's mouth with no force or weapons. Like, it's all about that inner strength and solving your problems, almost telling yourself that you can do it and it'll be all right. Like, there's no outside forces helping you do it. That's the inner thing. Like, you got to have the courage to walk up to the lion and be like, and now we sleep. Okay. The infinity symbol as a halo connects her to the magician, right? With the magician, he realizes all things are possible, creation, manifestation. So this symbolizes our unlimited growth. Like as far as you want to take that, you can. However you want to grow that courage and that inner strength, it's unlimited for you. And then the yellow sky for us represents the element of air, which is always having to do with the mind. So that also lets you know that this is something that is internal and it's not about the outside forces of everything, but something that you're overcoming within your mind. And now it is over to Kat for, I don't have that page.
Okay, the Hermit.
Hermit.
You're going to advance our image.
I am. and boom.
Ooh.
I love how I already forgot that I was supposed to do part 2.
And the Hermit. As an archetype, the Hermit is the archetype. The Hermit is a highly knowledgeable, sage-like being that represents knowledge and wisdom, intelligence and creativity, and lastly, guidance. He's a loner, preferring to spend time searching for the deeper meaning of life. In our modern or even in ancient times, this could be a monk. A good movie reference for this might be Yoda, as Yoda was, as Jamie's.
That's what I came up with. I was like, yeah, the Hermit is definitely a Yoda, like that wise teacher you meet on your path that kind of is like, you can do it, or maybe not.
So what we see in the Hermit image is an old man standing atop a frozen mountain in some kind of twilight, maybe, and he holds a lantern. We know he's an old man because he's got a long white beard, which indicates to us that he's wise. He's lived a long time. He has a lot of experience. This is somebody, this archetype of the Hermit is somebody who could be a teacher, a guider, a guide. And he's holding a lantern. The scenery around him, the frozen mountains and the night sky, signifies withdrawal from the rest of the world. So remember, this guy is a loner. He stands alone atop the mountain in the dead of night with no distractions so that he can hear spirit speak to him. So he's on a pilgrimage of sort. Is what I think of when I think of him.
Well, and I wrote in there so that he could hear spirit speak, but it's also like source, it's the universe. It's, I don't want anybody to get hung up on that one word because that could mean very specific, like talking to the other side, like ghosts, spirits, whatever. But it meant like source, hearing universal messages because without the distractions, we really are able to focus on stuff outside of ourselves. So,
or focus on things inside of ourselves,
well,
that we
mind,
can
quieting
our mind and being able to work through our stuff.
Yeah.
So his lantern, interestingly, in his lantern, it's not a candle, but it's a 6-pointed star, and this represents the elements of fire and water. So it's the arrow, so it's the top triangle turned up and the triangle turned down, and that makes the 6-pointed star, which is what lights his lantern. And this is also, in addition to being fire and water, this is the union of feminine and masculine, or two opposing elements in harmony.
So the reason that I think that his lantern is represented in that way is because normally when we're going through life, we take sides, right? So we feel only one way, but when you're really evolved or you've been through a lot of stuff, you no longer just sit like plainly on the scales, like, you shift. You're like, yeah, it's never just one way or the other. And I think that's why the star representing the two elements coming together is important, because when you have that knowledge or you've seen things, you no longer judge stuff like, oh, that's going to be this. It can't be anything else. Or that person is just this. So that wise person lets you know, sometimes it's not what you think it is. Like, you got to expand outside of what you know. So combining fire and water is like, well, how do you do that? What is it? How do you make that an alchemical thing where it produces light? So that, I think there's like that hidden knowledge or something else he can teach us with that lantern.
You know what else he's doing with his lantern? He's lighting the way for others on their spiritual transformation. That's part of his job. And the staff that he holds is a symbol of leadership and authority. Yeah. So those are all the symbolisms. If you can connect with the pieces that are in the Hermit, I think it's obvious to see that he's a man alone. He's a wise old man alone on some kind of a journey. and he's far away from everyone else and sort of in his searching or learning, he's on a spiritual journey.
Yeah, like the higher path, seeking the higher path.
Seeking the higher path. Okay.
All right. We're going over to the Wheel of Fortune, which I got to tell you guys, we're supposed to keep this with lighter notes and not do the super deep dive because this is supposed to be for sort of beginners. But there's a lot to say about the wheel. And I want to tell you the reason that I think that there is so many pictorial or symbolic things within the Wheel of Fortune, because it gives everybody a chance to see something different. Because this is the card of fate and luck. So if we were going to have an archetype of it, this is like the card of fate or luck. Some people think fate can be bad, like you're destined or fated to, never love, or it's a curse in your family line or something. That's how some people think about fate. Other fate feels like we were always fated to meet, the love of my life. Like I got this amazing journey. So people view fate and luck as sometimes positive, sometimes negative. And the basis of the wheel, before I read everything, is just that in those 8 spokes, imagine yourself, other people, they occupy one of those spokes. And as the wheel spins around, you're either on the up of it, in the good luck and the good fate, or you can be in the down of it. And it has nothing to do with things that you specifically did. People like to relate it to karma, but it's more just about, without moving through these cycles of life, you wouldn't learn much. You don't learn much when everything goes your way and you're always happy. We learn from those hard times and those struggles where we are able to break free from that and grow.
So we need the hard times to appreciate the really good stuff.
We do
too.
Yes.
That's really important. You might know people who've always had it really easy, and they sort of take that for granted. I mean, there's people that I've known that just had like an easy life, and they're like, yeah, that's the way it always is. And I'm like, yeah, one day when, if the day ever comes when you get the rude awakening that everything's not always like perfect, it's going to be a harsh reality. So yes.
All right. So it reminds us that nothing stays the same. When you get the Wheel of Fortune card, nothing is staying the same. Wherever you're at in your life, whatever the situation is, whether you're reading for somebody or yourself, and it's like, I'm having a really hard time, and you get that Wheel of Fortune card, guess what? Change is coming. It always changes. That's the constant. Through good times and bad times, the wheel is always turning. It could represent somebody who wins the lottery and then all of their relationships break down because they don't know how to manage after receiving a lot of money. Like that is an example of how you could have this fated fortune and then lose everything around you that you actually love. And then you're just left with money where you thought that was the goal, and relationships truly were what you valued more. This card is layered in symbols so that many interpretations can be made. I did say that at the beginning. So the symbolisms within it, the 8 spokes can also represent the 8 pagan holidays that we go through within the wheel of the year. So you can think about it as in the wheel turns fully in 1 year's time, if you wanted to speak about it in time. The letters, okay, this gets into some deeper stuff, and it might, if it is not something that you really want to connect with or look into, just ignore these parts. But the letters within the wheel, there's 2 kind of words within there. First, there's tarot again, like Taro, which relates back to the high priestess, secret knowledge, kind of lending that. It could be a T at the other side of it. There could be other stuff, but it sort of fades into that mystery of like, ooh, well, that has to mean something, right? It's not a coincidence that those letters are in there. And then the other 4 symbols represent the Hebrew letters for God. So I'm not probably going to say them right. I wish that
Yod Hey Va Hey. So that's how those are these, starting at, what did I say, at the upper left, starting in the upper left corner,
yeah,
where you see the symbols in between the actual letters of Taro. Those symbols are the Hebrew letters for God's name, which nobody really knows what his name is. It's like a secret, but
there's a lot of different names.
But those letters, that's what those letters are. Yod Hey Vav Hey. Now, hopefully I'm saying it right.
Exactly. We don't know if we're saying it.
I don't speak Hebrew.
Okay, then there's all these little Egyptian symbols within there, so knowing the history of the tarot, they did want to pull from ancient mysticism to bring in those elements to say, like, this is we're bringing in the divine that has laced through time in different cultures. So you've got, it can be Anubis or it could be Hermanubis, I think is how they say it. And that's representing the god of the dead, and it rests at the bottom of the wheel, representing that there's life and death and rebirth. So remember, as that wheel spins, it's always clocking back through that cycle. The Sphinx sits atop the wheel and represents diversity of life. The creatures in the four corners, which I just love that part so much because it also correlates with the world card when we get to that. But the creatures are the fixed zodiac signs. Okay, so they're Leo, Aquarius, Scorpio, Taurus, and Leo. And it's all of the fixed signs. And the fixed signs in the zodiac are the ones that represent the go, get it done, do action, always moving. And I kind of picture them as reading these little books going, okay, how do I get to my true self? How do I find this like path? Where am I going with this? I want to do and get something done so that it means something. I keep saying and I have the notes in front of me. Okay, each creature reads the book indicating that they're seeking knowledge. That's a way for you to reference. This card is about experiences give us knowledge. You need to go through the wheel in order to gain experience, which in turn gives you the knowledge that you seek. And if you want to get really nerdy, the four symbols inside the spokes are alchemical. Okay, they're the alchemical symbols for mercury, sulfur, water, and salt.
So that's the symbols. If you look, start with the symbol at the very top, that's mercury, and then read clockwise. The symbols are
what? Sulfur, water, and salt. After that, mercury, sulfur, water, salt.
So there's a lot going on in this. So much going on in this card.
Because I think that no matter who you are and what your beliefs may be, you can find something in the card that's like, oh, well, that is definitely in tune with me. You may not like zodiacs. You may not know anything about the Hebrew language. You may not know about tarot. You may not, but and it pulls from so many things. So somebody who might like the Egyptian culture and sees a card like that, and they're like, oh, I feel like that's lucky for me. And I feel like that's a symbol for me. So there's just everything that you can kind of imagine within there. The 8 pagan holidays represents, the British culture and everything that happened over there that we brought into today's world.
Well, the other way to think of this is this card represents the cycle of life, right? The cycle of
life, death, and rebirth.
Yeah, life, death, and rebirth. So you have all the symbology in there that's representative of these different aspects of life. And so it's a very deep card on, you've got a closeout.
Yeah.
You have a closeout statement. But
I mentioned it in the beginning because I thought it was easier to understand. So I'll reiterate it though. If you get this card and you see all the symbols and you're like, this is overwhelming, I can't tell you what every single symbol means. Just remember that as a wheel with spokes, if you're attached to one of the spokes and the wheel is turning, you're going to go through highs and lows. That is the easiest way to remember the card without truly looking at all of the symbols, to just understand that experiences of highs and lows can bring us more knowledge. That is what we should take from our hard experiences or our good experiences, is that it's always this too shall pass, right? Bad time, this too shall pass. Good time, this too shall pass. It will forever keep changing. And that was a long session for the wheel. That wasn't even our deep dive card, but it's so much. I love that card. It's definitely the mystics card where you're like, ooh, I can read so many things. Over to Cat 4. Justice, the judge. Archetype of the judge.
The archetype. So the archetype for this card is the judge, and the judge represents fairness, justice, and harmony. Good judges are impartial, unbiased, and objective. In a reading, this card may indicate a person, an actual judge, or somebody in a position of making decisions like that, or exacting some kind of
like a decision. Yeah. I mean, it could be decision for punishment, settlement, awards.
It could be lots of things. It could be
any kind of competition you could enter into, or something where there has to be a judgment passed.
Or it could be a physical place, so a law office or a courthouse or even a prison. If you hopefully nobody's going there. So the symbolisms on this card are back to the person. So we were talking about this. I'm like, who's a good judge? It's like, who's a real, and I'm thinking of like TV things. So you guys remember the People's Court, and like Judge Judy. And I always thought that whenever I watched Judge Judy, I mean, it was kind of out there a little bit, right? Pretty dramatic. The show was kind of, it was just people with some crazy stuff, right? But I always felt that she made a fair decision. So I liked her for that, even though she was a little bit snarky. That was probably for TV. But her decisions when she was faced with what sometimes felt like impossible choices to me, because you have somebody over here saying one thing and someone over here saying something else. And if you don't have receipts, then it's his word against her word or their word against. So, and you have to judge, like, what you have to judge as fair as you can to be as fair to all the participants. And I thought she did a good job. So if you can think of a judge that is a good representation of the judge card, which is somebody who is fair and exacts justice or unbiased and impartial, assign that person to this card. In the symbolisms of this card, we see the judge sitting upon a throne between two pillars. The pillars representing duality of balance and duality and balance and leveling up. The judge holds a sword in one hand, and notice that the sword is very straight, pointed straight to the skyward. This indicates a balanced mind. The scales of justice are in the other hand, and this is balanced action or judgment. That's what the scales are representing. He or she, I can't really tell if this is a man or woman, it could be either, but I say he wears a red robe, which symbolizes action, power, and authority. The red banner on the behind the judge between the pillars is a banner of passion. Imagine how passionate we are about our own beliefs of right and wrong. The square in his crown represents equality, and the circle on the robe is unity. A simple word for justice is fairness. For this card is fairness. And we achieve fairness by uniting in equality.
So I love that part, because if you think about the square and the circle, and that the way that we get fairness is uniting in equality, that is what the square and the circle represent, is unity and equality. So unity being the circle and equality being the square. Just those two symbols for me is like, oh, okay, I get it. All right. So it's sort of like with strength, we're doing stuff for the betterment, not just of ourselves, but for others as well. You know, to be a judge must be one of the hardest things. I would never want to have to do it. I don't feel like it would always be easy.
No.
The people who hold those positions that need to pass judgment and seek out the truth, I can only imagine how difficult their life might be. And that's why the flag of passion, that red flag behind, having a passion to seek out the truth and really bring justice, is sort of like a superhero thing. I didn't add that into this card at all because it's not a superhero card, but it's sort of how kids believe when they're younger and why they want to be police officers and firemen, because they want to do the right thing. We're really taught that early on in life. And then as we grow up and wrongs are done to us, we're like, okay, well, I've lost faith in humanity, or like everybody's awful and terrible, you know, and a judge has to see things unbiasedly. So it's a hard card for me to maybe relate with, because I probably have a lot of biases against people, or just walking into situations being like, nope, I don't belong here. No, I can't do it. And if I tried, I probably could have conversations or get along, but my social awkwardness is just like, nope, you don't belong here. Nope, leave. You judge the situation too fast. And you're like, oh, no, I can't do this.
Well, and this card, I feel like this card could also be us judging ourselves, either harshly or unfairly, or maybe biased.
Yeah. Anytime that biased opinion comes up.
It would depend on, of course, all of the cards. We're looking at the cards as single cards and talking about the symbolisms of the cards and trying to learn the meanings, the different meanings. But what really matters is when we start using them in readings or spreads. And I want to start next week with like little 3-card spreads, so we can start practicing some of the things that we're doing and trying to see. That's kind of my idea for homework. That was a sneak peek of homework next week, where we're gonna use the cards, and it doesn't have to be right, but I think it's a good idea to start early on putting 3 cards together and then knowing what we know about them. What do we, how do we interpret all 3 of them? So that'll be in week 4.
Yay.
That'll be something new and exciting. I'm excited about that.
Because that's when you start to feel like you're a better reader, right? Remembering single cards together or single cards is awesome. But when you start laying them together to receive a message, you're like, oh, okay, it's like building the structure of a sentence or a paragraph. So it just gets a little more complicated, and there's more of an interpretation, I think, of what you think it might mean.
And to begin with, nobody get nervous and bail on us next week, because there's not going to be like, I'm not going to come over and test your own work.
No.
But what, you're free at this point, this early in the lessons and in this class, and even for probably quite some time, you're free to read a book and get your meanings from there. But just be sure that as you're doing that, as you're reading a book and you're starting to glean information or ideas or opinions about the cards, or you're getting things from the cards, be sure to write those down. Hopefully everybody is keeping their journal and they have 1 page for each card. I know Tracy does, because we saw a picture of that. I'm so happy for you. That's really going to help you as you go on this path of learning to read tarot, even if it's just for yourself.
Yeah, it especially works for yourself first, and then you branch out. I told Kat we should start doing readings at this local shop that like hosts anybody who wants to come in and read for people. They're like, yeah, sure, just sign up and you start giving readings. Like, we should do that. That would be super interesting. Really test ourselves. Okay, I think we're over to me for the Hanged Man.
The Hanged Man.
And there is the Hanged Man. So I did choose this card as a deep dive because the Hanged Man seems to perplex people on, why is he a hanged man? The words of it can even be sort of an affront to like, ooh, that doesn't sound pleasant at all.
It's a little bit misleading, because he's not a hanged man.
Yeah.
He's a hanging man. So, because a hanged man is like from the gallows, right? They got a rope around there.
See the words, they're always like, oh God.
Yeah, the
death next.
Yeah, exactly. The hangman, I think just hearing the words "the hanged man" brings up this image in your mind of somebody hanging from the gallows. I mean, for centuries, we hung people from a rope to exact punishment. That's not what this card is about.
A lighter note. Okay, the archetype of the Hanged Man, because he's his own archetype, or she, it represents the new perspective or a different way of looking at a situation. Imagine a kid that is like climbing all over the jungle gym, and when they get to see things upside down, they kind of become obsessed with the upside down look for about 6 months, because it's just totally new and unexpected for them, and they have the strength to hold themselves, looking underneath the playground, and they're like, wow, it's the same, but it's so different. It's the exact same environment. You're just seeing it in a new way.
It's like a new world. It's a new world view almost.
Okay. I don't need to sing any Jasmine and Aladdin. Well, with the Hangman archetype, it serves as a powerful reminder that sometimes it's in the act of surrendering, because he's also very still, hands behind his back, like sort of in this position willingly, that true transformation and spiritual awakening can occur. Sometimes we spend so much time fighting our obstacles and fighting what we think we should have or we shouldn't have, that we forget to just start accepting and then really paying attention to what happens when we stop the struggle fight, right? Something that we're so used to is fighting for something, getting things done, having chaos, working through problems. And when life becomes very still, sometimes like in retirement, after people stop working, they're like, what now? Where's the purpose? What do I do if I don't have that fight anymore? What am I living for? Where do I find my true purpose now? And the Hanged Man reminds us of that. So the scene is that he's hanging by 1 foot from a tree, and his expression is like calm and content. He's almost peaceful even, right? It's like, why, dude? You should be super uncomfortable. But he's indicating that he has an acceptance of his situation. So that the key is that the expression on his face is he is not in terror, he's not in pain, he's not seemingly uncomfortable. He's actually kind of at peace hanging there.
He's pretty chill. I mean, just look at his body posture, his facial expression, his hands behind his back. He's like, yeah, I'm just kind of like hanging out here, seeing what's going on.
So this is him actually getting that new perspective. He's perceiving right now. He's that still and that calm because he's taking it all in from this new perspective.
New vantage point. Yes.
New advantage point. Yeah. By opening ourselves up to the new perspectives, we actually embrace the cycles of change. That's what I mean. Fighting against the current instead of letting it take you somewhere that could lead you to a better place. This reminds me of people who, date, break up, make up, break up, make up, break up, make up. It's like you're constantly.
Don't be talking about that.
Listen, this is not about you.
Wait a minute, that felt really personal.
It was not.
It's probably me and at least one other person on this call can relate to that.
It's that fight towards something we believe we want instead of letting it be and then seeing what comes next, right?
Oh, that's so hard.
The surrender. Yes.
That's really hard.
Well, and you're a Scorpio, so it makes it extra hard.
Yeah, fixed. So once I make up my mind, that's it. And I'm really hard to change my mind. So yes.
So in the simplest terms for the hanging man, this is where we're letting go of old beliefs. We're letting go of egos. We're just really surrendering to what we cannot control. For me, it reminds me of parenting. You get to a point when you're parenting a child and they become a teenager and the fight is real and there's just really nothing you can do about it and you're not changing them and the influence period is over.
It is the worst. I raised 3. She was the only one that didn't make me want to jump off a bridge. At least not for a while.
Getting real personal tonight.
Just sharing a little bit. Make sure we have other parents in here who have raised children or maybe are raising children, and you can relate when they get to that age. You can't pick them up and put them in their crib anymore or in their room. They're as big as you.
Yeah.
So then it's like, now it's the battle.
Yeah. They're like, anyway, you're grounded. They're like, I'll call my friends. I'll be out of here in 5 minutes. Like, try it. Like, what are you gonna do? Force me? Yeah, physical altercations are not going down. All right, well, the symbolism within this card, I do believe that his face really tells it all, that there's this calm, collective, look and expression, even though he's in this predicament that seems uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable. So he's in that change position, and yet he's calm and collective, kind of waiting and accepting for what's to come next, seeing it in a different perspective instead of fighting it. So we have the upside down posture with the leg crossed and the arms. And it's when you turn something on its head. When you turn something on its head, you make it the opposite of what it once was.
Ooh.
So when we have problems, sometimes, and if you see therapists like I do, that's one of the techniques is turn the problem, flip it upside down and then see how you react to it, or see what solutions you can come up with if you have a problem. So turning it on its head, that's a literal interpretation almost of this card. The halo, because he kind of has the halo around him, this is enlightenment. So you have to be somewhat enlightened to sit through an uncomfortable situation without yelling, screaming, throwing a tantrum, starting to use a drug or alcohol or turning to partying or whatever way we would act out in a tantrum. The halo is showing that there's this enlightenment. And that's one of the reasons that he can probably sit there and be in this uncomfortable state and go, I know that this is for my good and I accept it. The red pants, this is action and passion again when we bring in red. So he has to have reason and passion behind him wanting to be uncomfortable because he knows that on the other end of this, something better awaits. I think that, okay, I don't know if we read this, but I love this interpretation. So if you look at the yellow shoes and the halo and hair, this is the thoughts going from, head to toe, right? Or toe to head, depending on how you read it, the colors are containing him, which is the mind is literally the entire body is consumed by the mind. You have the passion in there and you have the blue for calm and water and emotion, but from yellow to yellow, that's his barrier. He's like, you cannot escape your mind on this one. And then I know for blue is we wrote down knowledge, and I think that it's because the heart chakra is green, but you have your throat chakra, which is blue. And the closer that you get to clothing and jewelry around your throat chakra representing that same color is maybe you don't speak, you don't do anything. That's the silence, that's the stillness of him, because the deeper knowledge is there, knowing that when the time comes, when I'm ready, I will be able to speak with my whole heart, my whole being. So from throat to heart, how the shirt covers you. And that knowledge opens pathways. So there's just this waiting for everything to be uncovered. He knows it's coming. He's waiting calmly in an uncomfortable position because he believes that what's on the other side is going to be better. Now we have this simplified, because this was a deep dive, so we gave you a lot of information. The simplified way of thinking about the Hanged Man is picture. Okay, what?
It's pictured the opposite of how we live our daily lives. So
the Hanged Man is pictured opposite of how we live our daily lives, right? We don't stand on our heads. So the meaning is to view and reflect on everything in the opposite way to achieve enlightenment. That's it. So turn it all on its head to achieve that enlightened state. That means you're no longer, I mean, this goes hand in hand with the other cards, but we have a spectrum of feelings, emotions, decisions, lives, whatever. Don't live in one spot. Be able to see it from one side to the other, be fluid through it for true enlightenment. And that is the deep dive on the Hanged Man. Over to Cat 4. And it's
death.
My favorite card.
Death. Okay.
I love the death card.
Death is not about death usually. Like nobody's going to die if you get this card. The death itself is the archetype, but it's not the physical act of dying. It is the moment when we give up or let go of old cycles and we allow transformation to take place. One of the things I thought about this card before I started really learning it was that this is a card of transformation. It's not actually a card of transformation. It's a card of letting go of what you need to let go of so that you can transform. So I think for me, that was an important distinction. This is the caterpillar becoming the butterfly. Remember that everything changes, and without death to clear away the old, nothing new could find a place in the world. We see this all throughout the cycles. Everywhere in life, we see this. Old people get old and they die, and younger generations come up. In the fields go to
crops.
The crops die off, and then we burn them or we let them sit for the winter, and everything is dead, and then they come back in the spring. So it's the cycle of life. But without death, or the death of things and letting go of things. Because remember, this is not like death per se, like we think of death when we hear the word death. I'm in the death care industry. I think of actually deceased persons that need care, because that's the job that I do. But this is things that we need to let go of so that we can go to the next level in our lives.
I think a good physical example is when you're going to move, all right? Most people, I think, have done that in their life. They've moved from one house to another. When you move, you have to strip that house down to bare bones and get all your things out of it normally, right? You have to literally leave it decimated, not a home anymore, nothing on the walls, cleaned out, sanitized, whatever. And then you have to move into a home that same thing has occurred. So I think that was one of the more poetic ways to talk about death, is that without removing the old stuff, nothing new can come in and grow there. And that's such a pivotal part of the cycle that we all are on. For our bodies here have to die and go back to the earth, and all the elements that were ever on earth are still here. Nerdy fact, all the water that's ever been on earth is still here. So my husband and I sometimes sit at the beach and go, I wonder if this wave was like dinosaur pee at one time, because it's the same water. Like it didn't go anywhere. It just became like, it just cycled through other stuff, right? So those same water molecules are still water molecules and could have been dinosaur pee at one time. Something to think about.
There's a lot of symbolism in the death card. So let's go through that. We have a skeleton. He's dressed in armor. Mm-hmm. The skeleton represents the faceless future. He's riding a white horse, which is a symbol of being saved. Is that like the white flag, the white horse, right?
Like you ride in on your white horse. That's the savior of the thing. It's an old saying to ride in on your white horse.
The river and the blue land are not yet in the sunlight, so there's unknown emotions to come.
Which happens with change. You don't know how you're going to feel once, before you get into it.
Notice the size of the skeleton and the horse, how much bigger he is than all the other figures in the scene. We have a dead king. We have a pope that looks like he's begging. We have a child and a woman So the meaning is that change has a large impact. So change impacts a lot of things. And I think the other thing about the king is like death doesn't, there can be a literal sense to death because death comes for all of us. So the dead king, it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, death comes for everyone.
Change comes for everyone.
Change comes for
and
everyone.
whether that's in the form of death or not.
No, we're all going to transition out of this world and into the spirit world eventually. Yay. Thanks. I'm glad for that. But I mean, not right now. So.
Can you imagine staying in our bodies for 200 years and what they might look like at that point? You're like, please.
Oh, please. My knees can barely go upstairs
funny.
now. And I'm not even like there yet. Okay. He carries a banner with a white rose, meaning purity and true love. This is not this event, the death card and the change that it brings is not a negative. It's not a negative event, but a fateful one.
Fate.
There is a ship. So if you look on the water, and you have to look close for this, because on the water, on the river, a ship sails and the sun rises, and off in the distance, the sun rises between two pillars. The world continues to spin. Death is not the end. That's what this message is telling us. When the death card appears, it is our job as readers to provide hopeful messages, and even in the wake of heartache. So keep that in mind as you start to learn to read cards. We think, I know you believe like I do. It's like we can get cards that we know may not have the best message, but we can always frame it in a way that's positive. And I think that's important as we go out into the world with our tarot decks and say, let me read your cards and the message that we bring, because there's always hope and there's always choice. Yeah. So whatever the cards say today, something different is going to happen tomorrow. So just keep that in mind as you learn to read, and as you read for even yourself, but especially for other people.
Oh, we're already at 7:49. Well,
okay.
I wanted to give a small story, a personal story about actual death in my. I know. I'm so
We're
sorry.
slow tonight. Sorry, guys.
The cards get deep. This is why it's like, oh my gosh, how do you present this in 30 minutes? I'm going to keep it very brief, but in my life, the way that death then opened the door to something beautiful, because I think of death and door as like a literal word for the same thing. Death is a door where we enter another place, our physical death. But then when we have deaths of cycles within our lives, we open up a door to a new land of something else. When my father passed in 2011, I was literally heartbroken for like a year, barely left the house, didn't do much, nothing. But the year after that, when I finally opened myself up to hanging out and, meeting people and just trying to get back to life, I met my wonderful husband. So if I had stayed in that really dark place and just mourning the loss of the thing, right, the life that I had with my dad, I would not have been able to open up that door to finding like my perfect partner and my husband, who I've been with for like 9 years now. So that's a literal translation for me of a true death had to occur. And I have to be grateful for him passing now. That's even weird when you have to be grateful for the thing that died to allow the other thing to come into your life that you grow with, that flourishes, that becomes beautiful also. That would be like the hopeful message that you could give to somebody. When something does clear out of our lives, it does open it up for something beautiful to come along if we allow it. Because it's a choice. We could stay in like the sad,
and you'll see this a lot in relationships where a relationship is ending, and it's heartbreaking because a lot of times people have put a tremendous amount they've invested a lot in relationships, sometimes decades of it. And so when those end and it's time to move on, that's a pivotal point in people's lives. And it's hard to see at the moment that that's happening, where a relationship is ending. It's hard to see that there's going to be anything beyond that.
Yes.
Because you sort of get stuck in that, like, this is it.
What I'm losing.
This is how I envisioned my life with this person. We had all these plans. And then for one reason or another, either you break up or perhaps they pass away even, but the relationship ends. And now you're left with yourself and this faceless future.
Skeleton on the white horse.
And you have what you don't realize that you have in those moments is opportunity to create the life that you want, or another version, not another version, but the next version.
It could be a
the
version.
next chapter,
Yeah,
the next chapter of your life. So
Perfect.
keep that in mind with the death card. A lot of people see that and go like, you know, their first reaction is freak out, and there's no reason to, really. It's just
say change is a coming, and you're probably not escaping it. All right, we are on to the last card for tonight, and this is another deep dive card. We choose 2 every week, and this card is Temperance. And I chose this card because, again, the words Temperance were like, what the heck is that?
I had
What's
to look it
temperance?
up. I'm like,
I
what
know.
is temperance? I don't even know. That's not a word we use in modern times.
Which I have,
At least me.
I've never used it. I've only known it in tarot. Again, one of the reasons why the Rider-Waite sometimes was harder for me to get along with was the antiquity of it. It brought in so many things from the old days where I'm like, I just don't vibe with this. Can I get a newer edition? So when everybody started making tarot cards, I was like, my people are here. That's what I was waiting for. Okay. The card Temperance is the archetype of the alchemist. And even that is sort of still an ancient way of saying blending 2 things in moderation. So temperance is about blending 2 things in moderation. And I'm only saying 2, but it probably could be more. But blending of things together for moderation. You are taking 2 extremes, say fire and water, right? Well, water exists in like 4 different states, so that's a harder one. But anyways, 2 elements together. You're merging them and you're creating something that is less of each. So it's not as heavy or wet as water, and it's not as
fire and water
and
would
hot
be
as
steam.
Fire. Steam hurts. I've been there.
Fire and water would be steam.
It's not a great example, but that is what the 2 things mean. So an alchemist blends 2 things together for moderation to achieve a different state. At its core, the alchemist archetype embodies the concept of blending opposing forces. That's why I did choose the water and fire thing, right? One puts out the other one. Cute movie, Elemental. If you haven't seen it, super cute, fire and water. Finding the middle ground and avoiding extremes is part of the archetype, okay? So it's finding the middle ground. So when you have temperance and it comes up in a reading for somebody, imagine that they need to find the middle ground for a situation. The figure's calm demeanor represents that state of inner peace and contentment, which is where you're trying to bring the 2 extremes to. That's why, this angelic being is there going like, look how easy it is, guys. just do
it's
it
magical.
Like this.
Well, the way she's pouring the water is you would never be able to pour water that way. So it truly is magical.
It becomes a mystical thing. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Temperance is not a word that we use much in our modern society, which we said, but temperance means moderation and restraint even. So think about the word temper, okay? When I think of temper today, I think about like a temper tantrum. I think about bad temper. I don't necessarily think about temper like, you have such a good temper.
That's temperament.
Temperament is the range of tempers that you're born with or that you have, but a temper it can be good or bad, but temper. You got me off track. I'm going to start going into my psychology stuff. Okay. When you hear the word temper, it's the more modern term to describe our emotional state, right? A lot of times people are like, oh, their temper is bad. It's always a negative connotation, but what temper actually means to manage. That's it. So the word, like originally, the origin word is to manage. So when we think about the word temperance, is you are being a manager of something. You're the manager of 2 extremes. You're the thing that steps in and goes, whoa, guys, let's simmer this down. Let's bring it all in. Okay, we can relate this to alchemy because it is blending the elements, not to be made of just one thing, but to be the combination of things. So that is where we get moderator, we're combining, we're being the middle ground. That's all temperance. The symbology within the card is the angelic figure pouring the water between the 2 cups, so it seems. The angel is the alchemist. She's showing us what can be done with a calm demeanor to bring 2 things together in a state that has a mystic quality. The water appears to flow in both directions at once. Have you guys ever noticed that? That the water is like, you can't really tell which way it's pouring, and it's not really like overhead, like gravity's not at work here. So it's representing the process of alchemy wherein the impossible becomes possible through the connection to the divine. So the angelic being the divine, her creating this flow in either direction as the moderator of the elements. And this can be between two people. It can be your own emotions inside your body. When we look down at her feet, she has one foot on land, symbolizing that's the real world. So she has her toe in the real world, but then she has the other one dipped in the water, representing our unconsciousness. So as you try to bring your unconscious feelings into the real world, or the real world into your unconscious feelings, this is where things get muddled, and you need to moderate the understanding of how one affects the others. I will say it plainly. This is repression of things. This is shadow work. This is going through your stuff that is not pretty and working it out, saying like, if I acknowledge it, I can be in control of it. I can choose what it becomes. So on her robe, a triangle is the symbol of fire, and on the head is the symbol, the circle with the little dot. That's the astronomical symbol for our sun. And the wings are red because that's passion and action again. There's that red. So we've got all these fire elements of keep it moving, keep going, don't give up, right? Have passion, take action, be the sun, go forward, have that energy around this alchemist blending of two elements to be better. All right, if you look to, if we're looking at the card, it's the left. If you look to the left, there's a road that crosses against really fertile ground. And when we see fertile ground within the tarot, this means that there's opportunity for growth, that everything is planted there, ready for you to go on this journey and have a beautiful bounty within it. So this road crossing the fertile ground leads to the mountains and what looks like a crown. It just depends on which deck you have. The original drawings, it doesn't necessarily look like a crown, but it is kind of like wiggly lines with the gold halo kind of thing. And in Kat's deck, the illuminated tarot, it is definitely a crown. It is like a drawn out crown. And this is symbolizing the journey to higher enlightenment. Imagine that our road of blending our elements of bad attitude and best intentions leads us to the higher road of some kind of compromise within ourselves. In progression, the Angel of Temperance comes after the Death card. It's a symbol of the immortal soul liberated by death. Now we know our limits. Now we know things change and we accept it. Nothing can affect us. There are no more surprises. If we know that there's death, everything else we can be fearless of, right? Everything else is not the end. If we know death, everything else is possible after that.
Those are our 7 cards. That was a lot.
It was.
That was a lot. It took us 55 minutes to get through it. And we still have
being here with us.
Yes, thank you for staying with us. So now we have homework. I told you this is big homework week. We're going to have it. I'm going to read it.
It's going to be in other places.
But it's going to be in other places. It's going to be on the screen. And it's also going to be in our video. So if you can't jot everything down, don't worry. You're going to be able to get to it. But we're going to start with the strength card. So you're going to do a little journaling, reflecting on on each of the cards tonight. So strength. What would it take for you to approach a lion and gently close its mouth?
Because we want to think about the internal state of ourselves when we think about the cards. And that's the attributes that the cards hold.
Well, imagine the lion represents a difficult situation in your life. What inner skills do you need to resolve the problem?
Hold on. I'm getting to.
I don't want to go too fast. I see people are still writing, so I don't want to rush ahead. But
if you give us a thumbs up, we will move to the next one.
Yeah. The Hermit. So the question for the Hermit for you to ponder is, who's been a spiritual guide or teacher in your life?
Because that would embody how you interpret the Hermit. If you can relate it to somebody, if it is, who did Yoda? If it is Yoda for you, cool, awesome. Then you know when that card comes up, be like, right, channel Yoda, got it. Like advise them of somebody in their life that's like that.
Also, what value did they bring, or what value did they add to your life experience when you were going through a hard time? Just a couple of things for you to reflect on with this card so that you can connect your experience and your perspective to these cards, so that when you read them, this is about you. When you read the cards, it's about you and your interpretations. And you, with that, you bring your own perspective and your own experience with it. So that's your own words instead of, there's lots of books out there that can tell you what the card means and describe. In a love reading, it means this. In a career meeting, it means that. But really, if you want to learn how to read tarot yourself, then connect with the cards and find a way. And it's not going to happen all at once. So don't put pressure on yourself to feel like you have to have all the answers right now. They're going to come over time with practice. Next, we have the Wheel of Fortune. This is a big one. So this is a big one. This has so many symbols in it. To reflect on a time when you were in the luck phase of the Wheel of Fortune.
Top of the wheel.
What did you win? What happy coincidence occurred? Alternatively, reflect over when you were in the fate stage of the wheel, when a negative occurrence brought you to your knees and life sucked and you had no control over your outcome, only to watch it play out on your life stage. So think of the two aspects here on the Wheel of Fortune. When you think about the Wheel of Fortune and you reflect on this card,
up or down.
When is a time in your life when everything was going really great, and then you were at the bottom of the wheel and everything was shit and it looked like there was no way that things were going to get better, but the wheel turns, the wheel keeps turning. So it did, didn't it?
This too shall pass.
Yes. Next, Justice.
Oh,
all right, we talked about fairness with with this card, like the base.
I would say the one word maybe thing.
One word about this card, I think, if you were going to sum
fairness.
this word, if you were going to sum this card up in one word, it would probably be fairness.
Seeking fairness, delivering fairness.
Yeah, but judging is something that all of us do. It's human nature to judge. Mm-hmm. Has there ever been a time in your life when you were judged unfairly? Who were the judges? How have you coped with the false judgments placed on you? And did this experience help you not to judge others?
Yeah, because it's really interesting how we don't want other people to judge us, but then we turn around and we're like,
So this is really, the whole judging, not judging people, it really takes a lot of work. I'm not speaking from my own personal experience, not to make assumptions about people. So we go out into the world, we encounter people who are dressed a certain way, talk a certain way, do certain things, and those are stereotypes. And so we sum them up in that. And so it's, I'll tell you, my whole experience of being here for the last 4 years, I've grown over the point where I can now I try to go out and just accept people for what they are, who they are, not even try to determine that person's like that or think about that. But that's a process that we have to get to. So when is a time when you were judged unfairly, and who were they, and how did you handle that? Next, we have the Hanged Man, another card that we talked a lot about, because this is one that's misunderstood quite a bit, and people don't really like, what? The Hanged Man? He's not even hanged. He's hanging upside down. What does that even mean? So reflect on an epiphany that you had. When did you make a profound realization for changing yourself? Consider this. Who you are is not what or where you've been. These are old versions and old choices. Every day we wake up new, it's a choice to engage in old behaviors or create new ones. My 4 years, 4.5 years now, over 4 years I'll tell you, I was in a really toxic place before I moved here. And I am happy to say that I am no longer there.
And then
but it has been a process. I mean, I even had problems with my youngest kid when I first got here because we butted heads so much. It's been a process. And then you learn, it's not really important to be right, even if you're the mom.
Well, I think what's important is like your right is not everybody else's right either. That's why I don't really talk about right and wrong with cards. I would just talk about that spectrum of where we all find ourselves, whether it's morally, what we think is the best thing, the right thing, whatever. It's your right and our right. The rights and the wrongs don't always match up. So
That's
they're
true.
hard
They don't.
words to use. I use them hardly ever now because it's not the truth, I think.
Because right and wrong is different for everyone, or
Yeah.
could be different for everybody.
It's not the experience of everyone.
Yeah. Okay. And the death card, the scary card that people freak out when they see a lot of times.
I love the
So
death card.
how has death, which is clearing away what you no longer need to make way for something new, how has death played a role in your development? What are your beliefs of the afterlife? So we are talking about the physical death then. Reflect on how phases, reflect on how phases or circumstances within your own life have died, i.e. the end of childhood, the end of being single, the end of a marriage or career. So all of us have experienced things in our life where a period, there's been a big
things end.
That things end. Yeah.
Our teens ended, our 20s ended, our 30s ended.
Yeah,
I'm there. That's it. I'm in the 40s now.
I mean,
that's okay.
Relationships end. Even the boyfriend that you had in high school that you thought that would be it forever. You'd never love anybody else in your whole entire life. And that ended and you were so devastated. You did not think you could even live. It was just horrible, right? I think most people can relate to that experience because I feel like it happens to almost everybody where you're like, this is it. I love him so much. And then you're like, oh, geez.
Okay. No, now looking back when your mom keeps pictures of things like that and it's embarrassing and you're like, can you please help me forget this stage of my life? Be great. There's also losing pets. This happened to me recently. And the way that I've sort of tried to deal with it is that I know that there is another pet in the future for me. So that's opening up just that other door, right? I wasn't going to have 10 cats eventually. There's going to be a passing through the cycles for another animal even to come in, whether it's relationship, somebody you're mentoring, there's always the next thing to come in that you can assist with their development, have great memories, and, then things move on.
And your last card to reflect on this week.
Wait. Oh, there. Okay.
Is Temperance.
Temperance.
So where have you encountered extremes in your life? Bullying, the workplace, others telling you where you belong. How about what you deserve or who you deserve to be with? In Temperance, we blend opposing extremes, not reinforce them. Where can you find more moderation in your own beliefs of others? So this is even of yourself. So this isn't, this is a deep card when you think about the meanings of it and how much we can grow if we spend some time reflecting on what this card really means. I think all of these cards. So the whole thing with the major, the thing with the major arcana is that they're all big things in our life, big things that happen. These are not the everyday stuff. This is the big shit. Right?
It is.
And so as we study these cards and try to learn them, remember that when we get into the minor arcana or the pip cards and the royal families and all that, and I'm using some terms you guys probably don't know, but when we get into the minor arcana, those are like the everyday things that happen. But these cards, these are the big things that happen in our life, the things that really change us or where we have the opportunity for growth.
Well, and they last. This is not a 1 year. This is not a 2 year thing. This is an overarching theme that we revisit many times in our lives. So that's what these cards represent, is the different parts in our life where these major themes, these big things come in and have an effect on us and change who we are, level us up, or we get stuck. I mean, there's also the stuckness of them, but they do represent the heavy shit in our lives. So if it feels like we're talking about that, yes, that is right. You're feeling it the right way then. That's it. It feels like a lot.
And which is why there's only 22 or 21 out of the 78 cards in the deck. Thank goodness, right? Yeah. Because otherwise it'd be like, oh, I can't handle this.
I don't want 78 huge life issues. That is only 22.
Too much, but they're they represent the things that we need to learn to really elevate to our higher self. That's the journey from the Fool to the World. Thanks for joining us for week 3 of our journey through the tarot, where we studied the meaning of trumps 8 through 14.
Next week, we complete our journey through the experiences of the Major Arcana as we study the cards 15 through 21.
2 of these cards, the Devil and Judgment, are heavily influenced by religion.
We'll explore how these religious ideas made their way into our esoteric world.
As we've mentioned before, learning tarot takes study and practice, so be sure to do the homework, which you'll find at the end of this video.